starting right now.
All right. Hello, welcome to the Convo Couch with Pasta Jardula
and Fiorella.
How we doing today? We got David Hildebrand on with a little late night episode. We want to talk a few things. David Hildebrand, welcome back to the show.
How's it going? It's not that late, guys. It's only 8.
Well, you know, on the East Coast in Dennis Kucinich land, where we're getting bad numbers, not happy numbers. It's getting kind of late, but even still, it's 8 o'clock over here. How's the campaign going?
We're still as busy as always. We're actually printing out some yard signs, so we're going to be even busier passing those out. We have canvassers out, and we're actually pushing a knock all doors campaign. Basically, if you want to, we'll send you a pack of flyers, and you just go out and do what you want to do with them. Knock every door, give them to your friends, plaster parking lots, do whatever you want, because we're at the end now, the last month, and we're really trying to push flyers out.
Okay, that's awesome. Where are you going to next?
I'm actually doing another Northern California trip. I'm going to get Redding, Shasta, and Chico in. I know I've been to Chico like 7 times, but I'm going back there sort of as a post getting the Chico Our Revolution endorsement meeting. So I'll be doing that next.
You recently got your 9th Our Revolution endorsement. How that's pretty awesome, because I don't see another candidate coming pretty close to that.
No, the other candidates are 3 and 2, and the one with 3 has an overlap. So we're dual endorsed by one of the same clubs. So it's actually I'm well in the lead. I don't know if we'll be able to close enough Our Revolution locals before the June 5th election, or even close enough to it that we could get that endorsement. But we're doing what we can to get it.
Yeah. I know people can nominate candidates for the National Our Revolution, so I know people are doing that as well.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke, Dave.
Well, I wanted to bring up something that was interesting. Pasta and I were looking it over on the California statewide direct primary, the official voters guide. When you go and open the front page on the a little bit of the candidates, you see the front page is this. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Who is that? I don't recognize that guy.
And other candidates were in there, like Allison Hartson, a Green Party member. And I just wanted to ask you, why weren't you in there?
So when I went to put my name on the ballot, it cost over $3,000. So at the time, we had about $2,000 left in the bank. So I wrote up a candidate statement that was going to cost about $2,200. The reason why I say it was going to cost that much is because it's $25 a word to get a candidate statement. So if you want to know how much each candidate statement costs, take the full number of words and multiply that by $25. So the full candidate statement is over $6,000. So this is what candidates have to pay just to get that statement. Now, we obviously could have done a shorter statement, but we also had 4 different events scheduled in LA area and in Northern California. So if we would have put that through, then we would have had to stay home for pre-planned events that we already arranged with everyone. And we don't skip out on events. So we bit the bullet and decided not to go ahead with that and just go ahead and go to our events instead. And I think that worked out for the better, because we did get some endorsements out of those events. So it worked out for us.
But isn't there a big importance to get your name on that ballot, or excuse me, that information guide and your picture and your statement? Because I believe that a lot of the people are not really inclined voters. So they look at this voters guide as a very big important part of who they're going to vote for.
Yeah, and some people, gave me some grief for that. But at the same time, I mean, at the end of the day, what am I going to do in that situation? I mean, if we had more donations at the time, then that would have been great, but we didn't. We actually had kind of a burst right after then, which allowed us to do a lot more. But at that specific time, we actually didn't have the money to do it. So we would have loved to be in there. That was one of our strategies, was to get that in there. It was only going to be, like I said, a little over 2,000. So like a third of the size of the rest, but unfortunately it wasn't in the cards. So this is one of the effects of high dollar entry fees for grassroots campaigns. And I'm not the only candidate who wasn't able to get a ballot statement in there. So.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, because a lot of this has come up for discussion. I know plenty of people who are voting for Kevin De Leon, because they feel like he has the best shot. And they say that funding is a large issue. How large is funding? Like, how big of an issue is funding in regards to your campaign? In regards to grassroots campaigns, should that be the number one thing for a progressive grassroots campaign?
In the current situation, funding is necessary and definitely important. But people ask me how much I've raised, and I tell them I've raised about $25,000 so far, and that's for this whole campaign. And you've seen what I've done with that $25,000. You've seen me travel Chico 7 times, Redding, Weaverville area 3 times, Eureka, up and down the Central Valley, all over the Bay Area, all over LA, San Diego, Hemet, Ventura several times. So I've done all this stuff on that little bit of money. So when it comes down to it, it really isn't about the money as much for grassroots campaign, as long as we can get a lot of support and a lot of volunteers and get the word out there. And I think in this election, there's just so many progressives running that it's not necessarily opponents in this race that are soaking up all the volunteers, but opponents in a lot of other races that are soaking them up. So like in my districts alone, like just where I live, all the districts that encompasses that, from city council, and local dog catcher all the way up to Senate, we have numerous candidates right now that people are volunteering for. So it's just, at the end of the day, it's just the progressive movement. We have a lot of people, but we don't have enough to support every single candidate. So basically what we're doing is what we can with the money we have. And I'm actually amazed at what we've done. I've printed, like, I think during the whole campaign, I think probably 35,000 flyers. And I've got maybe 3,000 left. And that's just off the latest batch I just got. We have hundreds of signs coming out. We did 1,000 buttons, and those are all out. We did 2,000 stickers, and all but maybe 200 of those are out. So we've done a lot in this campaign. We're a close-knit, skeleton crew campaign at the core, but we have lots of volunteers and supporters everywhere. So that's what really makes the difference. So I mean, we'll see on June 5th what happens with votes, but we're feeling actually really good about this campaign.
Well, let me ask you another question, Dave. I want to revisit this because since me and Fiorella have started getting into gear, whatnot, we've been getting a lot of criticism from people who think that we should have stuck with the Demexit movement. Now, after I talked to you, you pretty much convinced me to go Dementer. I loved your argument. I love what you had to say. I just like to rehash that one more time. I mean, if you can go back right now, would you be an independent with so many Democrats running? And if not, why are you so pro Dementer?
So it's not necessarily that I'm so pro Dementer. That's not really it. It's a California strategy. So, and this is what I explain to people as well, is if I was in any other state, it might be different. But in California, in the 2016 election, even though Hillary was at the top of the ticket, people voted for her 60% to, I think it was like 38, 39% for Trump. So, or actually 28, 29% for Trump. So it was a huge gap. And a lot of people automatically voted Democrat. You can see that across the other races. So California votes Democrat even though they don't register Democrat. The Green Party in that election, they only got like 2%. And I don't remember any no party preference candidates on that ballot or what they got. So at the end of the day, it's a strategy thing. You need that D next to your name in California. That might not always be the case. In races like Gail McLaughlin, she didn't need it because she already had name recognition and she's already very well known for her history in Richmond and the progressive movement in general and in the Bernie circles. So they already knew who she was. So, she didn't have to do that. Whereas I, with less name recognition, have to do that. And one thing I like to show people, and I showed people online, is the LA County voter guide. Look who's number 1. So primacy voters, the first Democrat they see is David Hildebrand in LA County. So I hear there's a few people in LA County that are voting. But at the end of the day, the Dementer movement basically is to go in to take over the party. A lot of people call it trying to go in and push the party left. That's not what it is. It's literally going in to hijack the party's infrastructure, take it over by its own delegates, and completely revamp the party into a people's party. So when people think that we're going in there just to push current candidates or the current leadership left, that's not what we're doing. That's never been the plan. That's never what we wanted to do. If you want to do that, the indivisible and resistance movements, they're out there protesting in front of their representatives' offices and trying to push them left. We're not doing that. We are going in to literally remove the leadership and take over the party. So that's where people, you know, have a misunderstanding about Dementer. Fully on board. If people want to Demexit, people want to go green, want to go peace and freedom, movement for a people's party, do what you need to do. But at the end of the day, we have to remember there's only a certain number of candidates on the ballot. So like in my race, there's no green candidate. So it's like automatically, you know, in ideal situations, the Greens would vote for the most progressive candidate in the race, a non-corporate progressive Democrat. But a lot of Greens won't vote for a Democrat.
Who is the most progressive Democrat in this race?
Well, it depends on your definition of progressive, whether you're a Feinstein progressive or you're a Democratic Socialist progressive. If you're the latter, then that would be me. I'm the only Democratic Socialist in the race. No one else will claim that moniker or say the word socialist or do anything of the sort.
But what about the people that say that, you know, experience is a thing, and how De Leon, which I think he's your most fierce competitor in the sense of, you know, the other people running and taking away progressive votes. What, like, people say he has experience as the Senate pro tempore. Like, how do you respond to something like that when people just assume that you need to have a title before you can even run for something like Senate?
Yeah, well, I have a title. It's policy analyst, and it's right at the top of the list on the voter guide. So you don't really need a title to run. And judging by his performance at the LA Feel the Burn debate, where he didn't seem to know anything, and people keep asking me, "Who's that guy on your right?" He doesn't seem to know anything. And when it comes to having the title of President Pro Tem, which he couldn't actually put on the ballot because it wasn't his title at the time, he just has state senator. That doesn't go very far because remember, we're in a statewide race and he represented one small area of the state. A lot of people there, but one area of the state. So when you become Senate Pro Tem of a statewide legislature, that doesn't matter because the people around the rest of the state don't even know who you are. They don't pay attention to politics. So we're in a bubble where we actually know what that means and, you know, on paper and what their powers are and that they're head of the Senate, but outside that building, outside our bubble, no one knows. So actually, he hasn't got a lot of traction that he thought he would get. One poll came out that had me at 2% and him at 5%, trailing a couple of Republicans and I believe other Democrats or independents. So it's really, for all the money that he spent and put into this, he really doesn't have as much traction. And I think we actually will be surprised on June 5th at his lack of performance. I could be completely wrong. Maybe there's a Kevin De Leon undercurrent going on that no one's seen, but to this date, I mean, there's some progressives out there pushing him, but the mainstream, the public, I highly doubt that they're really going to go full on for Kevin De Leon.
What is the argument for some of these progressives? And I know you've seen them in some of the chats we've had on Facebook and whatnot, and some of the people we know have gone crazy. But what is the argument? The fact that there is no path to victory for you or Allison, and you should just get out of the way. But while some progressives are saying no, just because De Leon might have a better chance to win, you should be supporting a progressive no matter what until the runoff.
So my comments are, I'm very open on this subject, and that is if we back and support and elect more corporate candidates, they're going to do the same exact thing as we've seen in the past. So Kevin De Leon during his state Senate runs has accepted money from basically everyone, including like Chevron, you know, big pharma companies, oil companies, and companies like Raytheon. So as a state senator, you don't have a direct impact on going to war or not. But at the same time, they have their foot in the door into your future offices now because you accepted that payment. So that's what you avoid by voting for a non-corporate candidate. So, and saying someone doesn't have a chance or does have a chance, one, that's ridiculous in a top two primary in a Democratic state. Two, we won't know who has a chance or not until they poll fairly and they poll accurately and include everyone in the poll. So the one poll that they did include me in, I was within striking distance, almost within the margin of error of Kevin De Leon. So if that poll was accurate, then that's how close we are to actually being able to beat Kevin De Leon and get into the top two. So, I mean, to argue he has some special advantage is kind of ludicrous at this point still. When they polled just him versus Feinstein and no other, or what's it called, no option or undecided or whatnot, then he would come in at like last year at like 31%, or not 31%. Feinstein would come in like 47%. He would come in at like 21%. His poll versus Feinstein, his polling has actually fallen, and those people haven't gone to Feinstein, they've gone to undecided. So people, as the more they learn about Kevin De Leon, the less they want to elect him. And when they started polling for Republicans, it polled from the undecideds, and he kept falling down in the polls. So the more people learn about Kevin De Leon, the more he realizes he's just more of the same. So why even bother? The far right online calls him an anchor baby and says that they'll never vote for him. And they also say that if it goes to the main election, they'd rather vote Feinstein than Kevin De Leon. So this is how serious hatred these people have for, for minorities, one, and for him specifically. Because, I mean, when it comes to the issues that they care about, he's the same as Feinstein, only his parents came here illegally, so they're against him because of that. So it's like an extra step against him from those people. Now, do we need those people to win the general election? I don't think so. Do they really have a say at the end of the day? Maybe in the primary, depending if Republicans get their stuff together and can actually back one candidate, but they can't. They proved that this weekend at their convention. They couldn't back anyone for governor. They couldn't decide, and they couldn't back anyone for Senate. They couldn't decide. So at the end of the day, they haven't formed a coalition or cohesion or coalesced behind one candidate. So it's all up in the air again. So Republicans are going to split their vote, and they're going to basically undermine their own chances of getting a candidate in. So at the end of the day, this race is still very wide open.
Well, let me ask you this much: how did you're saying that De Leon was not that popular, and his unpopularity is growing actually? How did he manage to get the majority of the delegates to vote for him then?
He had a very good operation at the convention to get people to vote for him. He has very good operatives within the party, and they're movers and shakers within the party. But if you'll notice, the inner party, delegate vote versus the party or the outside vote, the general public, are completely opposite from each other. So basically what you have is kind of like a disturbing, Clinton-esque, pushing one candidate forward within the party. And at the end of the day, he still couldn't seal the Democratic endorsement. So at the end of the day, they haven't decided. So when the Democrats sent out their postcards of who was endorsed, it doesn't have U.S. Senate on there because they couldn't decide. So there's a lot of races where they were undecided. So it actually is not going to help him out at all that he got 54% to her 37 or whatever, when the general public has no clue, what even happened that weekend. And the general public doesn't necessarily even know that there was a Democratic convention.
Correct. So, the delegates are a small number.
Exactly. So if you're saying like a couple thousand votes is going to throw the state election, then you have to reframe your argument of who can win and who can't.
I think I made a meme for that one. I can send it to you.
David, I wanted to touch on something. Since progressive candidates are going to basically campaign in a different way than the establishment candidates will, how do you plan on mobilizing the youth vote? Because a lot of the people that don't vote are the millennial and younger generations, and they don't vote because the system is rigged, and they're so they're over the system. They don't know how to fix it. They feel like it can't be fixed, and they feel like it doesn't matter if they vote or not. And you have a lot of Twitter followers from everywhere, and you have a huge following. Like, how do you turn that into votes?
Well, lots of retweeting, lots of getting the word out is how we've been doing it. Social media, mainly Twitter, but also Facebook, of course. But what we've been doing basically is I've done at least 5 events at junior colleges around the state. So I've already been speaking to the youth, and that one poll that they actually polled me in, I was actually polling very high with that group. So that was where a lot of my votes came from, with that group. It was a very small selection size, and it had everyone included in it, but I actually poll higher within that group. So it's actually a good sign. So what we need to do is we need to give people hope and give them someone that's actually different, not different like Obama, where he says one thing, but he's still corporate, controlled at the end of the day. They want to see some real change. You know, they're actually educated on politics after the Bernie race. They know what's going on in politics. They know it's corrupt, and they're not going to vote for the same old, same old. So to get them out to vote, we have to give them something that they actually want to vote for. Because
Exactly.
I mean, we can all be cynical. We don't have to be, you know, college age or, you know, young adults out of college, just out of college to be cynical. You know, we can be cynical now, and that's part of this whole process is being cynical about what's there. But the difference is we need to have something to give people so they can come out and actually vote on something they believe in, not just more of the same.
Well, I mean, you're a political analyst. What happened with Dennis Kucinich today in Ohio? I mean, because we were looking at it, we couldn't believe we were talking about some of the candidates that we like and we're rooting for, but the one we had some of the most highest hopes for was Dennis Kucinich. And at last we looked, it was about 65% of the polls reporting, and he was down almost 300,000 to 100,000 in the votes. And I just can't put my finger on it. Can you help us out there?
As far as I know, and I haven't followed his campaign that closely, but as far as I know, he came into his campaign pretty late, or into the race pretty late compared to the other candidates. So that might play a big role. As for precincts reporting, when it says 65% of precincts reporting, that does not mean 65% of the vote is in. I'm not trying to give you false hope, but that means that 65% of polling places reported something. So
Gotcha.
technically, that could be one vote. You know, they
Yeah.
turned in one vote. So they might turn them in batches. So going forward, we might actually see that vote change. But at the current time, you know, that's what that actually means. So there still is hope. Swearingen, that was the race that I was watching closer. And
Paula Jean.
from the last time I checked, it said 80% in, and she was like 1/3 to 2/3. So it wasn't looking good. So I don't think we're going to pull that one off. At the end of the day, money will make a difference in advertising and whatnot. But if you can print stuff and put it in people's hands and get door to door, and actually get people fired up, that's what's going to make the difference. So I think that's where a lot of the races this year have suffered. And we will learn in 2018, you know, what we can do better and maybe what we need to change. One of the ideas I have is to build an organization that has nothing to do with financing, that every member gets a vote, and we decide at the beginning, like literally like 2018 general election day, the next day, everyone gets together and decides, okay, which races are we going to run in and who do we want to run in those races? So
Yeah.
before candidates even announce or anything like that, like a conglomerate of progressive groups will basically decide ahead of time. Now,
Okay.
the feasibility of this happening and organizing all this is pretty slim because, you know, the progressive movement is very split. But what I want to see happen is to not have the races divided between progressives like mine is. Everyone knows I was first in the race. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is we need to have other races for other people to get into. So if they want to run for office, great. We'll plug them in where they're best. So if we come around, you know, to Kamala Harris or whoever gets in Dianne Feinstein's seat, if it's not a progressive, to the next election, I might not be the person to run for that U.S. Senate seat if we find somebody better. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need to find good candidates for every single seat and only run one candidate for every single seat. And I think
Exactly.
this election and District 34 special election has taught us that. And hopefully we get that lesson not to join races that there's already progressives in, because we're not going to win that way. I mean, we're already at a disadvantage when it comes to being progressive versus a corporate Democrat. And then we also have a Republican voting bloc in the state too that's most likely not going to vote for either. So we need to develop a plan as a progressive movement. I want to see us do that statewide in California at least, because we're so close to taking over California when it's on paper at least, but then we're so fragmented in our movement and there's so much drama in the progressive movement that it just makes it like, yeah,
No.
you know all about that, you Russian spies.
Hey. We'll have the green screen on Moscow behind us. With that being said, Dave,
Yeah, so but you know
we
about
talk-
that, but like I've gotten attacked from all angles, and it's actually really interesting who I get attacked by. So I have the typical MAGA trolls that come at me on Twitter and just call me socialist and all this stuff and communist and whatnot. And I'm like, socialist? Well, yeah, what's the secret there? It's in my bio of my Twitter account. But people act
we're establishment shills. That's what we are.
I'm an establishment.
We're an establishment shills for supporting.
Yeah,
Bernie,
yeah. Well, you got big corporate funding for those fancy curtains in the background there.
You better believe it. There's a lot of money. Because Putin paid for all this right here.
You can afford two as well and cover up the whole back. I can only.
Let me ask you another quick question, Dave. You were talking about the organization within the progressive movement. There is a lot of talk that you, Allison, Pat, really don't have a strong chance of winning, and that's coming from a lot of progressives who say that. Are you eyeballing another seat down the road if things don't come back the way you hope for on June 5th? Is there something down the road? Because people say that you're just building your name up for a future run. Is there a little sneak preview of seat you might be thinking about down the road if things don't work out the way you want?
I will not let you know any specific targets, but I will say there are future plans. But I'll need to see some actual backing, and there's a lot of different things in play when it comes to if and when I will run next. So yes, there are plans there. Yes, there are multiple targeted seats, but when it comes down to it, I don't want to have, I don't want to be a vote splitter. I don't want anyone else to be a vote splitter. At the end of the day, we need to run good people for all the offices. If it's not me, that's fine, but we need to run good people for all offices. So my district, what I'll be focusing on is problem seats that we tried to replace this year, and we couldn't do it. So there's Ami Berra, which is not my district. He's next door. Technically, I could run for his seat, but people would call me a carpetbagger and whatnot because I'm a block and a half out of his district. So I'm not. People say that have to be in the district, but
no, Adam Schiff is like 2 blocks over. And I was talking about running against him in 2020 because Putin switches money over to me instead of Adam, so I would have a good chance. But he's a block away, but I don't care.
Yeah, so I could do that, but the thing is, when you run for office, you kind of want to run in areas that you actually can have an impact in the future. So if I ran in Ami Berra's district, I really couldn't run in anything for my districts because all my name recognition would be then built in that other district. So it would kind of cut me off at the legs or whatever. So I'm looking at a couple seats within state legislature, city council. We're looking at everything, and it's not just me. We need to form a cohesive group of people, which we kind of have already in Sacramento. We're kind of lucky here. We don't have a lot of drama. We have a lot of cohesion. So we just we get stuff done. So we have Wellstone progressive Democrats. And we plan stuff there. We have a lot of the progressive people who work at the Capitol or around politics already, or are members of different groups that are located in Sacramento. So we actually got a good thing going up here. We're running candidates right now for city council, all the way up to obviously my Senate position. But what we need to do for the future is just organize a lot better. People within the party that are taking over by the Dementer strategy, we need to learn the rules a lot better. We need to know to be on the lookout for certain things as they happen and be able to stop those things from happening. I think we were kind of taken off guard during the pre-endorsement rounds by them moving delegates around for the corporate candidates. And at the end of the day, there's not really enough delegates among progressives to play those games. So at the end of the day, we really need to win seats because those seats give us those delegates. And that's what we need to actually win over the party. We were 60 delegates away or so in the chair race in 2017. So that shows us how important those delegates are. If we had just two or three assembly or Senate seats, we could have probably taken that election because of the appointed delegates. And then we could vote away appointed delegates, and then we could actually have a representative party. But until we actually win those seats and have those delegates at our disposal, we can't do that. So that's what we're really working on inside the party. So there's two strategies going on, but they kind of go together. We need to win the seats, and then we need to use those delegates to take over the party from within.
All right.
Well, we just want to ask you one little quick question before we let you go. We want to say good luck on June 5th. We're going to be rooting for you over here and whatnot. Any last words? You want to plug your campaign? Anything we can do coming down the road to help out David Hildebrand for Senate?
Yes, go to the website and donate. And then when you're done with that, sign up to a Canvas. If you want to do just basically dropping flyers, lit drops, and knocking every door type stuff, email info at davidforcalifornia.com, and we will send you out a stack of flyers to do whatever your heart desires. And it sounds unorganized, but at the same time, during the Bernie campaign, we had a lot of people complain that they told the Bernie staff where they needed to go, and they knew where the votes were and who they could win over, and they weren't allowed to go to those areas. So I'm leaving the door open for people who have specific ideas. They think they can get specific votes in specific areas. We will give you lit to do that. We will let you do that. You just have to let us know, because we need all the votes we can get. So if you think you can get a block, you know, to vote for me, or a junior college students to vote for me, or your college students, you think they'd really be into this race and interested, then, you know, email us, info@davidforcalifornia.com. Ballots are already out. My friend just voted for me, of course. But my friend just finished her ballot already today. They started dropping yesterday. So the election started yesterday. So it's not about June 5th as much as you need to vote by June 5th. So if you get your ballot in a county where they're sending them out, there's 5 counties where they're sending them out early. And then there's the absentee vote ballots going out. And then there's also early voting. So it's a little confusing this year, but the good thing is it's a completely open primary, which means you don't have to register as a Democrat to vote for me. You can vote for me even as a Republican, Green Party, Peace and Freedom, no party preference. You can still vote for me. All the ballots will be exactly the same. So that's the good thing about this year, is we don't have to explain that to anyone. Just go and vote David for California, and vote for a lot of other people you'll see me tweet about online. Gail McLaughlin, of course, Delane Easton. If you aren't comfortable with Delane Easton, vote Josh Jones. He's the only other guy on the ballot that's corporate free with a decent platform. So yeah, but we're rooting for Delane. We really think that she can push it past that line. Ruben Major for Secretary of State, and there's a lot of other statewide offices. I won't really make an endorsement in, because there's not a lot of strong candidates, but there's a few good candidates. So I'll let you guys make that decision on your own.
I also wanted to ask you, because of what just happened right now with Israel launching a missile attack in Damascus in Syria. What is your opinion on that, on the state of affairs regarding our regime changes, regarding our warmongering ways? How would you help to, you know, kind of bring a sort of perspective like Bernie Sanders brings, where he advocates a no more war kind of policy. He advocates peace. He advocates against funding more money towards Israel. How do we get out of this?
So I'm actually quite a bit to the left of Bernie when it comes to defense and war. I'm against any foreign conflicts where we send our troops into their nations, where we have, you know, special forces, where we sell munition and arms to other nations. I'm not for any of that. So if a nation is going to oppress its neighbors or its own people, they don't need to be buying weapons from us. We don't need to be selling weapons to them. We don't need to send special forces into nations that don't have anything to do with our defense. So I wouldn't vote for the authorization to use military force. That gives the president more authority than he constitutionally deserves. And I wouldn't be voting for $700 billion war budgets. What I would want to see with the budget, which I wouldn't have power to make the change, but what I would want to see is a defense budget and an offense budget, basically, when it comes to the defense, what we call the defense budget now. If they do that, then I can vote for the defense budget. If not, I wouldn't vote to fund defense at all. I would be a vote against that bill, because I don't think we should be going to other countries and destroying their infrastructure and killing their people when we have stuff to do here at home, like heal our people through single-payer health care and actually rebuild our infrastructure. So if we can't even take care of ourselves here at home, then we shouldn't be off in other countries anyway. So it's like if you say someone, you know, someone loses their job and then they decide to go on a European vacation and they don't have any money. It's like, what are you doing? You know, we would all laugh at that person and think they're stupid or crazy, but yet we do that with our foreign policy. While our roads crumble, we go and blow up bridges and roads in other countries. And it's just, at the end of the day, it's ridiculous. We need to stop doing that. We need to bring the troops home. We need to close most of our bases overseas down. As an idealist in the future, I see us using our military might to actually go in and help with natural disasters, with climate change issues. So when a hurricane or a monsoon or something goes through an area and pollutes the water, U.S. Navy ship pulls up and filters waters for a whole, community or whole area, with the capabilities that Navy ship has. They can bring aid and whatnot to foreign countries instead of, bringing war to foreign countries. That's how we actually improve our face to other countries and improve, what other countries think about us.
Great. Yeah, I 100% agree.
David Hildebrand, thank you very much for joining us on the Convo Couch. Good luck on June 5th.
Yep.
Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Ladies and gentlemen out there, if you can go onto the Convo Couch page, hit the subscription button, we would definitely appreciate it. And we look forward to bringing you more news soon.
Bye. Have a good night.
Convo Couch.